Outgunned Superheroes is a tabletop RPG by two little mice out of Italy, written by Rico Sirignano and Simone Formicola, with art by Daniela Guibellini. Although this is a completely standalone game, it's also a thematic expansion of the action movie simulator Outgunned, which I reviewed on this channel. Outgunned actually won 2 Silver ENnie Awards in 2024 for Best Game and Product of the Year. The product line for Outgunned includes a core rulebook that covers what you could think of as classic modern Hollywood action movies like Die Hard, the James Bond series, Lethal Weapon, and John Wick. Outgunned Adventure is a standalone expansion that covers pulp action in the spirit of Indiana Jones and more early 20th century settings. Action Flicks Volume 1 contains a bunch of new mechanics like magic, alien technology for emulating the Predator series, and Star Wars, rules for vampires, ghosts, supernatural mysteries, sword and sorcery, and martial arts. And if you think that covers all possible action genres, there's Action Flicks Volume 2, which covers more high fantasy, westerns, Jumanji trapped in a video game stuff, and genre mixing advice and mechanics. And at the time of recording, they're working on a Volume 3 for Action Flicks, which I can only assume will cover every last possible action movie trope, concept, theme, and setting remaining on Earth. In the meantime, there is Outgunned Superheroes. In this video, I want to cover the quick start for this game, which is crowdfunding on BackerKit at the time of recording. I want to walk you through the core rules of this game, what a character is composed of, and how combat works. Then I'll give you my honest thoughts on this project so far. It should also be noted that I did a written interview with co-creator Simone Formicola, where I attempted to squeeze out more details about this project that are teased in the quick start, and we explored the design rationale of the game itself. Links to the crowdfund campaign, the free quick start, and the written interview on my newsletter are all down below. But alright, let's get started. I think the biggest question with standalone setting expansions like this is, if it's standalone, then is there any point in buying the core rulebook? The answer is, the core rulebook has a massive amount of content for more generic modern day action movies, as well as advanced rules for things like car chases, ranged fire distance rules, and a bunch of character building resources, but they're all optional for running this game. Let's break down the character sheet. You've got your name and alias. For role, this game will offer 10 choices. The quick start includes 4 of these: champion, tank, armored hero, and sorceress. Each role grants you a superpower and a point spend on attributes and skills, as well as a choice of 2 feats out of the 6 available for that role. There will also be 15 tropes, and both roles and tropes determine your starting skills. The example tropes in the quick start are Super Soldier, Tough Exterior, Billionaire Genius, and Walking Hazard. A trope gives you more points to distribute to core attributes and skills, as well as a 3rd starting feat. The idea is that you can mix and match these 2 categories, roles and tropes, to actually create something new outside of the mainstream comic book cinematic universe, or go with an established concept, as with these pre-gens. Origin is not supposed to be a long backstory, just 1 or a few words will suffice. Catchphrase is a way to remind yourself of your character's reason for living and can be used in roleplay. Flaw is a problem that your character is grappling with, and the GM should have this written down somewhere so they can impose hindrances to relevant roles. The way these attributes and skills works is pretty straightforward. There are 5 core attributes and 20 skills. Anytime you're making an out of the ordinary action in the fiction, you will choose any one attribute and any one skill and add up the number of points for both. That's how many d6s you roll in the hopes of getting matching faces. If you're reacting to something in the fiction, such as defending against an attack, then the GM chooses the attribute and skill combo for you. Spendable power points, any conditions that you're suffering from, and any special gear that you're using will add or subtract from your dice pool, but you can never have less than 2 or more than 9 d6s in a pool. In most cases, you are shooting for a 3 of a kind with the dice. Simpler challenges only require a 2 of a kind, and harder challenges require a 4 or 5 of a kind. The GM could also require 2 of a kind of success in a single roll. If you end up rolling extra successes, you can spend them on extra actions, and if you roll a better success than what is called for, you can upgrade your outcome or get an advantage in the fiction. Notice how loose this all actually is. The dice system is designed for very fast, casual play, and in a way it relies on a GM being able to think on their feet and really understand the rhythm and flow of a fun session. And under no circumstances do you want to get nitpicky with any notions of simulationism. There is just no room for that in a game that is trying to emulate action movies. One of the most important features of the dice mechanics is the fact that players can always gamble any initially rolled success by re-rolling any dice that don't contribute to a success. If they fail that re-roll, then they lose one previous success. Furthermore, they can re-roll all loose dice a second time, and if they fail that, they lose all previous successes. It's a gambling mechanic that doesn't require meta points or anything. You can just constantly wager initial successes every time it's your turn to roll. And as far as your health, it is measured with 12 grit boxes. As you fail defense rolls in combat, you mark off boxes. When you hit the 8th box, that's called the bad box. It means you take a condition determined by the GM and will mean a penalty on one attribute or another. Then when you fill the last box, that's the power box where you get one free point of power. I'll get to power in a second. Once you've marked off your last box, you enter the powerless condition and can't use your powers anymore. Once you lose any more grit, you enter the left for dead state, which is actually not covered in the quick start, oddly enough. As far as recovering grit, you pretty much get it all back at the first sustained break in the action. It's very arcade-like. Well, movie-like to be more accurate. Okay, power points. This is at the heart of your special abilities in the game. The GM is supposed to award these for good role-playing or cool moments or whatever, and you can hold up to 6 at any time. It's really important that the GM doesn't forget to hand these out like candy because they are needed to activate feats and superpowers. Feats are like the character's minor special abilities, and their superpower is their one big marquee ability. Players can try to save up all 6 of their power points and spend them at once to trigger a spotlight, in which they can remove a condition, save a friend, or check this out, do whatever you want. Talk about fiction first. Okay, you still need to discuss it with the GM, but this is just the sort of mechanic where there's a lot of trust put into the players to not be annoying or cheesy or otherwise immersion breaking. Hopefully you have good players at your table who just understand the objectives of the collective storytelling activity that you're all participating in. Enemies are constructed with 3 stats. Their grit, which is how much damage they can take, their attack, which is the level of success a player needs to roll in order to successfully defend against their attack, and their defense, which is the level of success a player needs to roll in order to land a hit on them. Which is to say, the GM never rolls in combat, it's all player facing. Let's take the 2 enemies you face in the sample one-shot from the quick start. The robot hounds have 7 grit boxes and a rating of critical for both attack and defense. This means that if a player wants to make an attack on their turn, they say as much and then describe the attack and then roll the appropriate attribute and skill combination. If it's a heavy melee attack, they'd probably choose brawn plus fight. If it's a push or tackle, then brawn plus stunt. A precise slash might be nerves plus dexterity. Since the robot hound has a defense of critical, this means the player needs to achieve a critical success on their roll. That's a 3 of a kind, if you recall. Every 1 success here will remove 1 grit. Once all the grit boxes are filled, the enemy is out of play. And likewise, if the hound attacks the player's hero, then the player needs to roll an attribute and skill combo that reflects how they are defending against the attack. If they're trying to defend against laser beams coming out of the robot's eyes, then they'd roll brawn plus stunt or maybe nerves plus stunt. The GM would actually determine the combo on this reaction roll. Since the robot hound's attack rating is critical, then players' reaction roll would need to achieve at least 1 3 of a kind to be successful. By the way, yes, the laser beams coming out of the eyes thing is something I just made up. A lot of details have to be made up in this game in order to flesh out the combat, and that's by design. The game is trying to be a movie simulator, and that just means participants have to come up with a lot of the creative details. Okay, here's the Green Knight, a more complex type of enemy that the game might throw at you. Notice that this one has 9 grit boxes, and the 6th one is a power box, meaning that when they take enough damage, such that this box gets filled, it triggers an immediate, out-of-turn special action. In the case of the Green Knight, this hulking 12-foot tall android, the special abilities are these. This enemy also has a couple of interesting feats that make it both deadlier and harder to hurt. It's nice that enemies sometimes do come with more details and mechanics here. The game also has a point buy system for GMs to create their own custom enemies. Although it's not shown in full in this quick start, GMs will be able to spend feat points to buy different feats. My guess is that in the full book there will also be a bunch of pre-made enemy archetypes to choose from as well. So alright, here are my thoughts so far on Outgunned Superheroes. Questions. How will all the extra stuff work? Experiences. Heroes will advance via experiences called achievements, scars, reputations, and bonds. I'd really love to know about how these work because the game needs to have some kind of character progression, but you also don't want to grow bloated with too many powers and feats. How will power tiers work? The quick start mentions that there will be 3 tiers of power. This is a great concept that I've seen in Supers RPGs aplenty, but how will they actually implement this here? How will team up work? In combat, you'll be able to team up with one other member of your party for a sort of powered up feat or attack. I'm curious about the specifics here. And how many super gadgets and super rides will be included? I don't really want hundreds of gadgets and vehicles, but rather a list that is robust enough that it covers all the major tropes in those departments. Bonus points if they throw in some GM advice on how to construct new gear and vehicles. Pros. Standalone game. I love the approach that Two Little Mice has taken with this and at least one other expansion for Outgunned, which is to include the core rules so that you don't necessarily have to buy the core rulebook. It goes against the economic norms in the industry, but it's consumer friendly and hopefully earns them customer loyalty and goodwill. Fast cinematic rules. Everything about their dice resolution mechanics is built for fast, streamlined play, and that means that the game is accessible to more people. Casual players, younger players, and older players can all belly up to the table and grasp simple, fun, gambly dice mechanics. This ultimately means more people can take their baseline cultural knowledge of superhero movies and experience the joy of playing out their own stories at the table. Awesome artwork. Daniela does amazing work for Two Little Mice, and this book is no exception. I wouldn't say that a Supers RPG needs cool artwork to sell it, but it really doesn't hurt to have picture-perfect, aesthetically consistent illustrations throughout. So yeah, that's Outgunned Superheroes so far. And again, I got to interview one of the creators, Simon Formicola, in my newsletter. He revealed some really interesting aspects of this game and the process for making it. I've left links down below for everything. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this Superheroes game so far and if you're backing it, and also about this so-called director's cut game system in general. Thanks as always for watching. I'll see you in the next one.